A developing tropical system in the Coral Sea, severe thunderstorms hammering Queensland, and a jet stream pattern that is keeping everyone guessing about what happens next. That is what we are tracking today. This is a situation that deserves your attention. Not because we are heading for disaster, but because the next 7 to 10 days across northern and eastern Australia could get complicated. Multiple systems, multiple threats, and some genuine uncertainty in the models that we need to work through together. Let us start with what is happening right now across Queensland and the northern tropics. The monsoon trough has been active, very active. If you ray in far north Queensland, you've been copping it. Mount Carbine recorded 113 millimetres from a single storm system 2 nights ago. That's not a light shower. That is serious rainfall that can cause flash flooding, road closures and property damage. Townsville has seen 4 consecutive afternoon storms, including what appears to have been a weak microburst yesterday. That's a sudden, intense downdraft of wind that hits the ground and spreads outward. Dangerous for anyone caught in it. Meanwhile, Brisbane copped a gnarly storm around midday recently. Strong winds, heavy rain, small hail. The shelf cloud that rolled through was something else. Reports suggest wind gusts comparable to what we saw back in late November. If you were outdoors when that hit, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But here's the interesting part. Despite all this storm activity, some areas are missing out entirely. Toowoomba has recorded just 35 millimetres since the 1st of December. That is well below average for this time of year. Brisbane, particularly suburbs like Aspley in the north, has had surprisingly poor rainfall this summer. And Nambour on the Sunshine Coast has watched storm after storm dissipate before reaching town. That patchiness is typical of convective rainfall. Storms form, they dump huge amounts in one location, and the place 5 kilometres down the road gets nothing. It's frustrating if you are on the wrong side of that equation. Now let's talk about what is developing in the Coral Sea, because this is where things get more significant. There's a low pressure system that the Bureau of Meteorology is monitoring closely. The conditions in the Coral Sea are favourable for tropical cyclone development. Warm sea surface temperatures above 26 degrees Celsius. Low wind shear. An active monsoon trough providing the atmospheric lift needed to generate organised convection. The question isn't really if this system will develop. The question is how strong it gets, where it tracks, and whether it poses a direct threat to the Queensland coast. Let me walk you through what the models are showing, and I'll be upfront about the uncertainty. The ACCESS model that the Bureau of Meteorology's own Australian Community Climate and Earth System Simulator shows this system developing and tracking in a general westward direction. That would bring it closer to the Queensland coast, potentially somewhere between Cairns and Townsville. The European model, the ECMWF, has a similar development scenario but differs on the track. It keeps the system further north initially, with a possible recurve that could take it away from the coast or bring it in at a different angle. The GFS shows development but has been inconsistent run to run about intensity and track. And then there is the ICON model. Now, some of you have noticed the ICON has been showing some extreme scenarios. Specifically, it has been suggesting a fully fledged cyclone with winds exceeding 280 kilometres per hour, potentially impacting Western Australia from the remnants of Koji. Let me address that directly. The ICON model is known for occasionally producing outlier solutions, particularly in the extended range and with tropical systems. 280 kilometre per hour winds would be a Category 5 system. That S Tracy territory, that S Yassi territory. It is not impossible, but it is not what the majority of models are showing, and I'd be cautious about putting too much weight on a single model solution that differs significantly from the ensemble. What I can tell you with more confidence is this: there will be a tropical system in the Coral Sea over the coming week. Whether it reaches cyclone strength and whether it directly impacts the Queensland coast is still uncertain. But the threat is real enough that you should be paying attention and preparing. If you're in far north Queensland, central Queensland or the North Queensland coastal areas, now is the time to check your cyclone kit. Make sure you've got water, non-perishable food, a battery-powered radio, torches with fresh batteries and any medications you need. Secure loose items around the property. Know your plan if a cyclone warning is issued. I know many of you have been through this before. Yasi in 2011, Larry in 06. You understand what a serious tropical cyclone can do. This system may not reach that level, but we want to know for certain until it develops further. And by then, your preparation window is closed. Let's talk about the jet stream and what it means for the track of this system. The subtropical jet stream has been in an interesting position. It's been helping to steer systems away from the Queensland coast, which is why we haven't had a direct cyclone impact so far this season. Some of you have noticed this pattern and are wondering if it will continue. Here is the honest answer. The jet stream position is variable. It shifts. And the models show some scenarios where the steering flow weakens or shifts, which could allow a tropical system to track further south than it otherwise would. So no, I can guarantee the jet stream will protect the coast. It might, but it might not. And banking on it would be unwise. Now let S broaden out and look at what is happening across the rest of Australia, because the contrast right now is remarkable. Up in the top end, Darwin is sitting in the low to mid-30s with high humidity. Classic build-up conditions transitioning into the wet season, nothing unusual there. Queensland from Brisbane north has been hot and humid. Some areas have been dealing with daytime maximums in the high 30s, and it is that heat and moisture that has been fueling these severe storms. Down on the Gold Coast, conditions have been a bit more settled. Some good rain came through yesterday, Arvo, settled the dust nicely. Today it is cooler, sunny and breezy. Pleasant enough, though the wind has been persistent. And speaking of wind, Carcoar in New South Wales has been copping gale force winds for days on end. That is the central west up on the ranges. When you are exposed like that, persistent wind is exhausting, damages trees, makes outdoor work difficult and just wears you down. The contrast between the tropical humidity up north and the windy, cooler conditions further south reflects the battle zone between air masses that is driving a lot of this weather. Let me spend a few minutes on severe thunderstorms because that is the more immediate threat for much of Queensland over the coming days. The atmosphere is primed for storms. You've got moisture streaming in from the Coral Sea. You've got daytime heating across inland areas. And you've got upper level dynamics that are lifting that air and helping storms to fire. The pattern we've been seeing is typical summer storms forming in the afternoon and evening, but some of these have been anything but typical in their intensity. Giant hail, damaging winds, heavy rainfall causing flash flooding. These are all on the table. If you see a severe thunderstorm warning from the Bureau of Meteorology, take it seriously. Get indoors, stay away from windows, don T, park under trees. And whatever you do, if it's flooded, forget it. Don T, drive through floodwater. The Brisbane storm that came through recently is a good example of how quickly things can escalate. 1 minute, it's a hot, humid day. The next, you've got a wall of wind and rain bearing down on you with a shelf cloud that looks like something out of a movie. If you are not prepared, you can get caught out. For those of you who've asked about whether Brisbane storm season will have a second peak in February like the old days, it's possible. La Nina patterns and active monsoon troughs can certainly extend the storm season. We've seen some quiet periods interspersed with intense activity this summer, which is unusual. Historically, Brisbane's peak storm season runs from November through January, but February can surprise you. Let me address something that has been raised about forecast accuracy and lead times. Weather forecasting is inherently uncertain. The further out you go, the less reliable the predictions become. 3 days out, we have reasonable confidence. 7 days out, we're dealing with much larger error margins. And when you're talking about tropical cyclone tracks, even small changes in steering flow can result in significant differences in landfall location. So when I talk about what might happen in 4, 5, 6 days, understand that I am giving you the best available guidance from the models, but I am not claiming to know exactly what will happen. No one can. What I try to do is give you enough information to make sensible decisions about preparation. If there's a 20 to 30% chance of a cyclone tracking towards your area, is that worth preparing for? I'd argue yes. Because if it does happen and you were not ready, the consequences are serious. And if it doesn't happen, you've lost nothing by having your emergency kit sorted and your property secured. Now, the question of the Victorian flash flooding has come up, and it's a fair one. East coast lows and cut-off low systems can be notoriously difficult to forecast in terms of exact rainfall location and intensity. When moisture feeds into a slow-moving system over terrain, you can get extraordinary rainfall totals that overwhelm drainage and cause flooding in areas that don't typically flood. Without getting into specifics of that particular event, I'll say this. Flash flooding is one of the most dangerous weather phenomena in Australia. It happens fast. It happens in unexpected places. And by the time you realise you're in trouble, it can be too late. If you're in an area prone to flash flooding, have a plan. Know your escape routes. Don T camp in creek beds or low-lying areas when storms are forecast. And monitor the Bureau of Meteorology warnings closely. Let's look at the outlook for the next 7 days, region by region, far north Queensland and the tropical coast. URE in the firing line for both severe storms and potential tropical cyclone impacts. Monday through Wednesday, expect continued storm activity with the risk of heavy rainfall, giant hail, and damaging winds. From Thursday onwards, the tropical low in the Coral Sea becomes the main focus. If it intensifies and tracks west, you could be looking at cyclone conditions by the weekend. Stay tuned to Bureau of Meteorology updates. This is not the week to be complacent. North Queensland, Townsville to Mackay, similar story. Severe storms through the early part of the week. The tropical low is the wild card. If it tracks south of Cairns, you are more directly in the path. Prepare now rather than later. Central Queensland and the Capricorn Coast, URE on the southern edge of the tropical threat, but not immune. Heavy rainfall from the monsoon trough is possible. Localised flooding remains a risk. Keep an eye on the forecast as the week progresses. Southeast Queensland, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast. Severe thunderstorms remain the main threat through Wednesday. That means afternoon and evening storms with the potential for damaging winds, heavy rain and hail. The tropical system is less likely to directly impact southeast Queensland, but it's not impossible depending on track. More immediately, the combination of heat and humidity makes conditions ripe for intense convection, northern New South Wales. URE also in the severe storm zone, the Hunter, the North Coast, northern rivers, all potentially affected. Similar advice, stay weather aware, have a plan for severe storms, southern New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania. You're looking at a different pattern. A series of fronts and troughs will bring some rainfall to parts of Victoria and Tasmania, but nothing like the tropical activity up north. Temperatures will be variable. Melbourne and Hobart will see cooler conditions behind fronts, with possible warmer spells in between. South Australia, Adelaide and surrounds have been enjoying relatively pleasant conditions, but you are watching the Coral Sea system too. If it tracks far enough south and crosses the coast into Queensland, the remnant moisture can sometimes make its way across the continent. It's a long shot, but worth monitoring if you are hoping for rain. Western Australia. The ICON model scenario of COGS remnants bringing a major cyclone to WA is, in my view, unlikely. But the Pilbara and Kimberley should monitor for any systems that might develop in the Indian Ocean or track westward. It is cyclone season, and the conditions are there for development. Now, some practical advice depending on where you are and what you are facing. If you're in a cyclone threat zone, your checklist should include water, at least 3 litres per person per day for 3 days. Non-perishable food, a battery-powered radio for Bureau of Meteorology updates. Torches and spare batteries, a first aid kit, medications, important documents in a waterproof container. Cash, because ATMs don't work when the power is out. Fuel in the car. Secure your property. Bring in anything that could become a projectile in high winds. Outdoor furniture, pot plants, trampolines, shade cloth. Trim any dead branches that could fall on the house. Know where you will shelter. If you are in a caravan or manufactured home, you need to relocate to solid shelter before conditions deteriorate. If you are in a severe storm zone, the advice is simpler but just as important. Don't get caught outdoors when a severe storm hits. Hail the size of golf balls can cause serious injury. Wind gusts can exceed 100 kilometres per hour with little warning. Lightning kills people every year. Get inside, stay inside until it passes. For those with livestock and property in rural areas, this is a challenging time. You can shelter cattle from a cyclone, but you can make sure they have access to high ground if flooding is possible. Check your fencing is secure. Have a plan for stock movement if you need to evacuate. And look after each other. Check on elderly neighbours and mates who might not have seen the latest warnings. Make sure people in your community who live alone know what is coming and have a plan. I want to finish by talking about what we done to know, because that is just as important as what we do know. We done to know exactly where the Coral Sea tropical low will track. The models disagree, and until the system develops further, there's genuine uncertainty. We don't know exactly how intense it will become. The conditions favour development, but not every potential cyclone reaches its theoretical maximum intensity. We done to know exactly where the heaviest rainfall will fall from the severe storms. That's the nature of convective rainfall. Patchy, localised and hard to predict precisely. What we do know is that the threat is real. Multiple weather hazards are active or developing across northern and eastern Australia. Severe storms, heavy rainfall, flooding and potential tropical cyclone. This is not the time for complacency. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website and app regularly. Follow updates from your state emergency services. Have your emergency kit ready. Know your plan. And if you're in an area that's been missing out on rain while everywhere else gets hammered, your turn might still come. Weather patterns shift. What has bypassed you this week might hit you next week. Stay prepared regardless. I'll have updates as the situation develops. The Coral Sea system is the one to watch over the coming days, and as the models come into better agreement on track and intensity, I'll bring you that information. In the meantime, stay safe out there, particularly if you are in far north Queensland or anywhere along the tropical coast. This is shaping up to be an interesting week, and interesting isn't always a good thing when it comes to weather. Take care of yourselves, look after your mates, and I'll see you